everyone. Welcome to Doing It Real. I'm really excited today to invite a special guest onto our show, a gentleman named Rizal, who I've been connected to for actually many years, and we've engaged on LinkedIn. But I've only just now got the opportunity to talk to him directly. And one amazing thing that we both found out just literally minutes ago is that we both have daughters named after Princess Leia from Star Wars. So it's always amazing to meet another Star Wars fan. Rizal, I'd love if you could introduce yourself briefly and tell us a little bit about the companies that you're working with.
Yes, thanks, John. I really appreciate it. I love every single opportunity to engage. And when you texted me the other day, hey, Rizal, you keen to, come and join in and do this podcast? And I said, yep, I'm all in. I'm all in. I definitely love doing engagement in any way possible. We are lacking of engagements these days, right? We can't meet face to face, and the only way is, virtually. And this is one way to do it. So thanks
Yeah.
again for having me on board. And yep, we have the force with us today. So I hope that the force will guide us through the conversations in this podcast. All
Definitely.
right. So just a bit about myself. So my name is Rizal, and I'm actually an aspiring speaker. I'm also a trainer, and I consider myself to be an entrepreneur, and I currently run three companies. All of them have separate businesses. The first company is called Red Pack Asia, so I'm wearing the uniform now. It's my Red Pack Asia uniform, red in color, obviously. I love red. And Red Pack Asia does management consultancy, speaking, and training. So it's a small team of people, passionate people who want to give back to the community and help future generations or new leaders. And the second company is called Tech Rabbit Technologies. It's a digital media company. We've been servicing clients with their digital media requirements, but we're also jumping into technology training as well. So
Wow.
things involving Facebook, WhatsApp, digital media marketing, and so on. And my third company is called Yeah 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 Studio. Yes, you didn't get it wrong. It's Yeah 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 Studio. I think that's the right way to say it. And it's a creative studio made up of amazing individuals, people who've been in the industry of creative audio and creative visual for at least 20 years or so. And these guys are award-winning musicians and award-winning visual artists. And we've been together for about a year plus already, and we are developing our own IPs. IPs meaning animation, and we have tons of clients around the world wanting to buy our IP and collaborate with us. And just for you, John, because you're on the podcast, I'm letting you know that we have just signed a big deal with one of the top recording labels in Malaysia to release our songs, which are meant for kids. So
Wow.
we create animation for kids and targeting for a TV launch in 2022. So it's been a long time coming, a year and a half or so. And even though it sounds like these three companies have been around for a while, but actually it's not. Um, I've only started the companies in February officially this year, and I left corporate in
Oh,
February
wow.
2021. So maybe for the listeners, a bit of an insight to me. I'm an accountant by practice, graduated in Australia, and I stayed there for 7 years and did a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know why. I studied accountancy because that's where the money is. That's what everybody say. You want money, you become an accountant. Later on, to find out that you count someone else's money, not your own money.
Yeah.
So okay. And doing accountancy meant that it was very number focused and it's very transactional. So it lacked the people engagement. So I went out and tried different things in Australia. Then I moved to Japan for about 7 years and I got involved in education. And I was a general manager there in a Japanese company,
Mhm.
bringing in foreign workers to support the education system in Japan. So
Yeah.
working with one of the biggest education companies that focused on early childhood and childhood young learners education. So that I was doing that for 6 years or so before returning back to Malaysia in 2013. Then spent a good 8 years working in a multinational, a global firm called Baker and McKenzie, or one of the partners for about 6 years. Then 2 years with Christopher and Leon, which is part of Raja and Tan Asia, a regional law firm prominent in Southeast Asia. So it was a very big learning experience for me, but opened up my eyes to a whole lot more things, uh, understanding more about myself. That's when I had an itchy backside, and come February, I left all that behind and wanted to try something different. So that's where the three companies came in, and that's where I am now. Talking to you, John.
Wow. It sounds really exciting, but it also sounds really scary to take on so much uh, in such a short space of time. But actually,
Indeed.
that I guess kind of brings us perfectly to the topic of this discussion, which is kind of success versus failure, and the importance of both, and kind of moving from one to the other. Because I in my day-to-day life, obviously I have my day job, but I spend a lot of time working with individuals and groups on helping them refine their job seeking, helping them improve their CVs, improve their LinkedIn profiles, improve their interview techniques. And one of the big things I find, especially now when we're coming to the tail end of the pandemic, so many people lost their jobs at the beginning of the pandemic, and they've been job hunting for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, and they've just had failure after failure after failure, rejection after rejection after rejection, and it's a massive impact on your attitude. And I can see when I talk to them, I give them advice, I can tell them what to do, but actually, what's holding them back is their attitude. They've already they go to interviews and they've already decided that it's going to be a rejection. And with these people, even if I tell them exactly what to do, it's not enough because they're in that wrong frame of mind. And I myself have never really worked out how to take that person and get them into the right frame of mind. So I'd love to hear your take on how you can work with people like that and help them get from A to B, because it's a vicious circle, right? Once you get into that downward spiral.
Oh dear. I mean, it is tough. It is tough out there. I think that when people talk about, looking for work, I truly understand, how difficult it is. And I've been very lucky throughout my life, my career at the very least, that anywhere I wanted to go, after the first, second application, I would already have gotten what I wanted. And yeah, so I've attended a few sessions talking to future graduates or those that are in the job market looking for work. And
Mm.
finding work is one of the hardest things to do. There's just so many reasons behind it because you've got so many options available out there, different industries, different companies. There's the location plays a part. Then you
Mm.
want to go into detail, the salary, the type of roles that you do. It's a whole bunch of options that people need to start looking at, and that is
Yeah.
pretty complicated. But if I were to say my biggest advice to people who are looking for work is that when you are looking for work, you treat it as work. So looking for work is work itself. So meaning that
Yeah.
don't worry about the hits and misses. What matters is your commitment that you look for work 9 to 6 every day. It's an 8-hour shift. And once you have committed a plan, let's say for instance, you have 8 hours a day. 2 hours is going to be on searching, and 2 hours is going to be on drafting your resumes and CVs, and then 2 hours will be on the follow up. And the next 2 hours you want to spend on trying to call up on those that you follow ups, and then try to call your network, and then doing some LinkedIn, postings or building connections through there. Once you do that, you have at the very least, instead of trying to aim for something that is far away, you have taken one step in front, one step ahead to building your
Yeah.
profile, and then making sure that you start really timing and putting a checklist on what you're doing. So if you people have 8 solid working hours per day. So if you're a job hunter, that's what I would always recommend people. Because you say, I've applied to so many. Yes, because what you do is you just go and click and apply all.
Yeah.
Of course, nothing comes back. You got to be focused. And once you break down your day uh, in those brackets of times that you want to spend, you in fact then start to really be more cautious about where you apply, and then the customizing comes in, and the actual follow-up does really tie in properly, and that's every day. If someone follows through this sort of arrangement where they have a very meticulous plan on who their target is going to be and how they're going to do it, you're bound to get data for yourself. If I
Yeah,
have been doing this for the past 1 week and it's not successful, what's the reason behind it? That's one
definitely.
information. Yeah, and the last one is that once you have done that, I think that because the world now is borderless, when I say borderless, not in terms of country, but in terms of reach, people to people, LinkedIn is one of those amazing platforms that allow you to speak to
Yeah.
anyone. So maybe I'm thick-faced, but for me, I reach out to people for help. I reach out to people for just connection and
Yeah,
ask questions. And if I have a particular target, I'm not scared to just go and email them. And I tell graduates to do the same thing too. Yeah.
yeah,
So there's no border for you. There's nothing to stop you from reaching out and finding out. And that actually does help, gives you a bit of insight of potential
it's a
employers or
massive help.
yeah, yeah, massive help. So yeah, so it's finding work is work itself,
Yeah.
and then it's a borderless world. A lot of people can help you.
And it's interesting because that's exactly what I tell people. If you're looking for a job, you have to treat looking for a job as if that's your job, and a big part of that is goal setting. And what I've found is that people set themselves the goal of getting a job, as in that's when they get the job, that's their goal fulfilled. But actually, they don't have a lot of control over that. Most control is in the hands of the interviewer, the hiring manager, the HR, and so 99% of the time they don't hit their goals. So if you want to treat it like a job, you have to set goals, or 90% of your goals have to be things that you can control, which, as you said, is you set yourself a goal to optimize your CV, then you set yourself another goal to optimize your LinkedIn profile, another goal to connect with X amount of people, and set all these small goals and have 90% of your goals actually focused entirely on things that you have 100% control over. They're not easy. They're
Mm.
still very hard to do, but it's you have the control over them, and only have that last 10% of your goals on things that are outside of your control, as in actually getting interviews and getting a job. Because otherwise,
Yes.
you're always going to fail 90% of the time. Whereas if you
Yeah.
set yourself these goals, things that you can take action over, you succeed. You succeed, you
Mm.
succeed, you succeed, and you get that emotional feedback of succeeding. Um, and I find in my personal experience that's what helps. But actually,
Mm.
it's amazing how many people do not take good advice and who resist good advice. I didn't realize until someone pointed it out to me that I was doing it. Um, they were giving me advice and it was good advice and I knew it was good advice, but there was something inside me that just, it's something to do with ego that makes you not want to take the advice. You think that your way is best. But actually, even it's not always down to the ego. The more I kind of analyze myself, sometimes when you are on a downward spiral, or you're you have been failing a lot, you want to cling to something that you know. You want to cling to something that is solid, and you're kind of scared to change what you're doing, and you cling to this idea, even though you know the idea is wrong, and you cling to it because you know it. And someone who comes along and gives you some good advice, you know it's good advice, but you're also scared of it because it's something new. And it kind of makes
Mm.
me think of how success is linked to kind of embracing change. I think you hear it on social media a lot, and from inspirational speakers. But what's your take on the importance of change, the importance of being able to adapt yourself, not so much for job seekers, but just in general?
Wow. When we're talking about embracing change, I mean that's the theme for the past for the past 2 years, I believe. And interesting that you mentioned that because yesterday I was running my own live show on LinkedIn called LOL with Rizal.
Mm,
It's not actually laugh out loud; it's living out loud with Rizal. And my guest was this guy named Siva, and we were talking about handling VUCA world, how to handle VUCA world, and his theme was the corporate chameleon. And we spoke
Yeah.
in depth about why the chameleon is such a special animal, and one of its capabilities is the ability to adapt and adapt to the surrounding, and that's how they when you're faced with a situation where it's uncertain and ambiguous, volatile, and very difficult, and there's lack of clarity, you definitely need to start putting, start uh, take a step back and being able to start framing ahead what you need to do. And for me, when it comes to embracing change, I always like this quote by this great man, Charles Darwin. My quote might not be the correct one, but it says that it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that survive. It's always the one that is the quickest to adapt. The
Yeah.
quickest to adapt is the one that survives. So what that tells me is that for me personally, you can be the smartest person, you can be the strongest, almost agile, and the one that is out there with, if you translate it to business, the one with the most market share, the one with the biggest budget, not necessarily could withstand change, because change happens so fast, and it's the one that is able to detect the change and embrace it, understand it, and then apply it in their work. So maybe what I would do is I will probably showcase my experience in the past 8 years working with Baker McKenzie and then Raja and Tan Asia, lawyers, second oldest profession in the world, right? Those guys are, they do the same thing what they've been doing since the start of their profession, and they have been surviving all throughout the many years in that particular industry without having to have that much of a challenge. I mean, there is always a challenge, right? But because their clients, because the market and the industry change, and they have new technological advancement, and then the products and services that their clients deliver, they themselves need to make sure that they are capable to service them and match them as per their requirement. And nowadays, the biggest keyword would be technology and innovation. So we definitely can't be applying the same thing that what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, and to be able to service our clients the best without understanding what changes they have gone through. So to be able to do that, there was a lot of things that we do, and one of the favorite topics that most big corporations launch or talk about is critical thinking and design thinking,
Yeah.
and I just love that topic. And I think it applies to anyone, in fact, individuals, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and even the large corporations. So when you're in a situation where you suddenly feel that, okay, things are working out well, but it's not where it's supposed to be, then it's definitely that moment in time when you start to reflect inwards and outwards. And the most basic thing that you need to do is that, as you mentioned just now, social media is one of the key things, because social media means everything's available. But what is available to us, it really depends on the social media itself. It could be a selected set of news that that's not important. We spend countless amount of time looking at junk when the real crux of the matter is actually there, but we're not looking at it, and we miss that opportunity to find out information. So uh, I always tell people that be in the know. So if you're in the business side, if you're looking for work in the business world, be in the know. You definitely need to read up. You definitely need to be very aware of what's happening in the market, and that's one way of doing it. And it's surprising that a lot of people don't do that these days.
Mm.
It's not a habit when it comes to reading. They're just happily saying that, "Yeah, I check Facebook, I did check LinkedIn," but LinkedIn is sporadic. The information that
Yeah.
comes up is not what is focused. So that's the outward looking. The internal side, um, from an individual perspective, um, I know I'm going tangent a bit. I'm now in my mid 40s, and in Japan, I remember, when you work in a company, it is mandatory to go through a health checkup. on a year-to-year basis, right? And then once you pass a certain age, I can't recall if it's 35 or something like that, then the test that they do gets a bit different, and then it's a bit scary. This is one thing that I used to drink, and they put me in the machine and they will just move me left, right, just like a pancake. And what it does, it scans the inside of my body, and it tells me whether my internal organs are all good and intact and functioning
Yep.
properly. So when it comes to changes, embracing change, sometimes we need to understand our core strengths and who we are as an individual. What are our personality traits and characteristics and whatnot. Sometimes people don't know that. So I always recommend for our people for my team members or for those that I've been speaking with, is to do a personality or profiling check on a year-to-year basis, because people change. You probably don't need to do the same thing. If you do an MBTI once, maybe you can do it in the next 3 years. But there's other tests available that you can take on. It gives you a different insight of who you are, and then it will tell a story, and it will tell you, then this is something that my preference. This is my preference, and this is what I'm accustomed to. So when that change do happen, I'm actually ready to face it, and I know what my strengths are, how I'm going to react to it. So I thought
Yeah.
that's something that I've been telling people, that you need to be focused on the outside world and all that you can learn, and the organization and whatnot. But from a personal perspective, start learning about yourself, and then that could mean doing those tests, or taking on subjects that you're interested in for personal development. And if you do that, whatever comes, you're ready. I think that sort of investment
Yeah.
of time and
It's
effort that you put into yourselves, yeah.
You're right. It's very interesting actually, because you don't notice the changes that happen to your identity from one year to the next. But sometimes you look
Mm,
back, but who I was in my 30s, who I was in my 20s, who I was before university, and actually those identities are all very, very different. But it happens so gradually
yeah.
that you don't realize. I myself am naturally very introverted, but I've had to transform myself into an extrovert. And you start off just pretending to be an extrovert, but over time it becomes natural. It becomes your real identity. But you don't kind of notice it, and then once you do, you can start changing your goals based on that. It's very interesting. As you said, change is something that you have to be prepared for. You have to be adaptable. But a big part of being adaptable is accepting failure, right? I mean, especially even myself as a recruiter, when I was in my first in-house recruitment job, which was iFlix, I screwed up over and over and over again. I'd only ever been a headhunter before, and in-house recruitment is very different. But that's the way I learned. I screwed up and I made it better. I screwed up and made it better again. I screwed up and made it better again. And luckily, I had a CEO who was very much behind that method of learning. And within a few months, we were hiring so many high quality people because of all those screw ups at the beginning. But actually, when it doesn't go quite right, and if you don't get that um, validation or reward from the screw ups and the learning that we're doing, you can actually again get caught in a downward spiral where you start to think of change and adaptability as a negative thing. You start to be skeptical about change rather than enjoying change and loving change and seeing it as growth. Um, how have you ever been in that situation yourself where you just thought, I, I just want to stay things as they are. I don't want to move. It's stable. It's nice. It's comfortable. Why do I have to change and do these things? Because I think a lot of people do get stuck like that, right? They have a few bad
Yes, yes.
experiences and they think, I'm just going to maintain my comfort zone.
Yeah, fear of failure. I think that's one of the things that stops people from trying new things and pushing themselves. And I
Yeah,
love the point you raised just now about your own experience, and going through a few set of failures, and then after that you start to learn. Um, this is something very critical for me, and I personally practice this belief, and I completely agree. I think that you learn so much more through mistakes. And I told my team members, I told my kids, my family members, my friends, I believe in the rule of three. So everything that we do, there's a cycle, and that cycle can be, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 1 year, and so on. But as long as there's a three, so in everything that we do, we are in the capacity to learn. So when we are in the learning stage, we go all out. We learn. We speak with a mentor. We speak with our bosses and find out what actually do I need to do. What are the goals that I need to achieve? And then once you have gone through the learning stage, is the application stage. And
Yeah.
through this application stage, this is when you start doing what you need to do, and you start to realize what the mistakes are. And if there are issues and so on, you take note of it, you learn from it, you get feedback, you revamp it. And then once you've gone through the second stage, then the third stage is already perfecting it. When I say perfecting it, doesn't mean that it's 100%, but you have taken stock of what you've learned, you've understood the trial and error, and you find out the best form, and you execute it on the third part. So this applies to most of the things, especially in business,
Mm.
in the companies that I run. And before, prior to this, I was in corporate, so my team members were like in hundreds, 200s. I want to be doing something. All I need to do is this is a strategy, this is how you do it, and voila, they do it.
Yeah.
But when you're on your own, execution, thinking, and everything, I have a hand in it. So a lot of the guys really at the learning stage, they were struggling already. And then a lot of people feel that result, this is not a good idea. And how do you know it's not a good idea? Until you go through it and try it, and you get feedback for it, and you validate it. So if you feel that it's not matching the expectation, and you feel that it's like it's nowhere close where you should be, then there has to be that push to relearn it and redeploy and do it. Until then, only then I will be happy and satisfied to say that you have given your best to correct the failure, and you have something out there. If anyone who doesn't go through that in first instance say that it's a bad idea, then I disagree, and that's my
Yeah.
reason. The three steps. So it is definitely something that everybody has to go through. There's no such thing as you do one thing and it works out. It can happen, uh, but somewhere along the line of a great new idea has already been a combination of previous ideas that
Yeah.
they did have done and brought in. No one comes in with a brilliant idea. Hey, I got something. Let's put in 100,000 ringgit. I'm gonna develop it into 400,000 ringgit in revenue. I don't know. I mean, the guy has to be really, really solid, good, forecasting skill and can see the future. I have a sixth sense. But I told my team or my team members in the past and now as well, whatever ideas that you have, if you feel very passionate about it, if you believe it, go for it. Let's try. What's the worst that can happen? Failure. If it's failure, then
Yeah.
how do we come back from it? And that's the biggest learning point, I think. And then whatever that's executed beyond that would have, been much more stronger and more impactful. And that process just goes on and on and on. And I think that's how I try to get my team to be on the ball and then learn from mistakes. Yeah.
Mm. I think sometimes failure can often be a good motivator as well. In that,
Mm.
sometimes if you don't fail, you don't know if you're pushing the limits. You kind
Mm.
of it's weird. You only know if you're pushing something to the limit if you fail, right? If you
Yep. Yep.
don't fail, it means you probably weren't pushing to the limit. It's like it's a bad example, but if someone says you're driving too fast, actually, if you don't crash, you're not driving too fast, right? If you crash, how can it be too fast? Uh,
Oh, gee.
it's a silly example, but I think you understand, right?
Okay, I'm not
So
gonna get in the car with you now. I'm joking.
it is good to fail. I think you because it's a signal that you are pushing something to the limit. Maybe a better example, not a work example, is one of my personal goals has been to improve my deadlift in the gym.
Wow.
So some days I'll go to the gym. and I'll be deadlifting, and I'll set a new personal record. But actually, as much as that makes me feel good, I don't feel that I'm finished in the gym until I try and lift a weight that I cannot lift up. Because if I lift it and succeed, that's just hitting a goal. But I'm not actually getting better until I push myself to the limit and I'm trying to lift something that I can't lift, and I have to put it down again. And I think, great, I put in the extra effort and I tried to do it even though I couldn't do it. And that's going to make me, it's that one that I can't do that makes me stronger for the
Wow.
next session. But what do you think about using failure as a form of motivation?
Well, I completely agree with it. I think that any stories always have, the mountain peaks and the alleys and whatnot,
Yeah.
and the rise through the ashes and how you overcome challenge. And that's always, the key point in any story, or any corporate story. In fact, people
Yeah.
learn through how we overcome failure, and it is definitely a big source of motivation. For myself, Red Pack Asia, even though it's a management consultancy firm, it also owns a go-kart racing team. So I'm actually a racing driver myself, but on go-karts. So funny that you mentioned cars just now. I was thinking, wow, this guy's a racer as well. Maybe we should go on the track one day.
One
And
day.
one day, pretty sure soon. So when racing, you're always going for the top position, and when you want to go for the top position, there's very low margin for error. You just have to be perfect at the qualifying runs, and then throughout the race, you have to be very consistent, and you have to gain the edge. We're talking about one tenth, 100, or 1,000 per
Yeah.
second. Probably not 1,000. That's like F1 already, but maybe within 1 second plus minus or 1/10. And for my team, the guys have been working really really hard. But what made us really appreciate our achievements, we won first place in our category recently, and that was after a couple of failures. So each
Mhm.
time we finished the race, I would have a debrief with them. And I said that, yes, we didn't attain the goal that we wanted, which was to win that cup, the first place, the coveted place. We got third place, or once we got, lower than third. What was the key learnings that you got from it? So people started talking about, that they realized that they felt like the team was supportive even though they didn't win. One person realized that he was the slowest, and then knew that he let the team down, but he was happy because the team still believed in him, and it made him push harder. And that, was a breakthrough, because the next time around when we were running training, that guy was the hardest on the track. He was working the hardest because he felt that he wanted to be able to prove himself, and he wanted the team to let him down, let the team down. So he was pushing himself to the limit, to the bare limit, and that was great, because after that I have guys who have tasted failure in some ways, even though it was a good one.
Yeah.
But they then were so driven, they learned from it, and that motivated them. I want to do it for the team. I know I'm not supposed to do, and we all have one goal, and then and to achieve that goal, these are the things that I need to do. And it was all through that discussion and being very detailed about our feelings and what our commitments are supposed to be like, and so on. And it wasn't a bashing situation at all. All I wanted from them is you tell me what are the the two good things that you took away from the experience, and what are the two things that are even better is. Even better is, what can you do? So I twisted a bit. There's some coaching element that I was putting in there, but the guys loved it. And then it wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't blaming. I never blame, because it's a team effort, and you pick it up. You try and pick it up and then put it back into it, and then we all work well better after that. So it is
Yeah.
definitely a good source of motivation from a sports perspective, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many comparisons between sport motivation and business motivation. But
Yeah.
I think you mentioned a quote from Charles Darwin earlier. I think I've got another one to throw back at you by the great Winston Churchill. Success is moving from one failure to the next failure without any loss of enthusiasm. And I think that sums it up, right? Um, not letting failure
Mm.
get you down, because it's not a finite. It's just part of the journey that you have to take.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I was interested in is obviously your time spent in Japan, which is a very unique culture, and has been a source of a lot of uh, philosophical ideas which are very interesting to the Western kind of audience. And definitely what caught my mind was the idea of beautiful imperfections, which I know is something that you've spoken about. And we get so drawn to that idea of perfection in every aspect of our lives, um, seeing problems as something that needs to be fixed, seeing these issues and failures as negatives rather than positives. But what's your take on that idea of kind of abandoning perfection and not seeing
Mm.
perfection as the end goal?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, that's an amazing topic, and it's a topic that's close to my heart. And this goes back to the time when I was in Japan, where, funnily enough, right, in Japan, I was a salaryman. I was a salaryman that I had to be in the office by 8:30, and then I start work at 9, and I have to finish work after my boss leaves.
Mm,
And he was originally from Tokyo, and I was based in Osaka. So he's basically living in Osaka just for work. So that means his family is in Tokyo. So he's by himself. So would this man go home early? No. And it's culture in Japan to not leave earlier before the boss. So you always have to just stay there and do work, or pretend to do work, or do your
yeah,
best. And Japan was very objectively driven. Everybody in the organization generally knows what the sales goals are, what the initiatives are, and what they want, what the department's supposed to achieve, because it's a mantra. They have this
yeah,
thing in the morning called asachori. Asachori is where everybody in the department stands up, and they all report what's going to happen, what are on their to-do list, and people take turn talking about it. And when it's your turn, you report on what you're going to do, and if there's any assistance required, and you're required to share something that is on your personal side that people can learn from. So it could be a newspaper article, a TV program you saw, a food you ate recently, a place you visited. So I felt that there was there's a human element in there, and it did give us an opportunity to get to know each other a bit more. But despite all that, I was struggling. I was struggling because I was a foreigner living there. I was never going to be matching the locals, and I had difficulty with language, even though I picked it up in the space of 4 months. And I was even better than a lot of those who are already in Japan for 2, 3 years. I was immediately brought into management because of my background and my ability to learn the culture and also the language. And it was so bad because expectations were very high, and I took over a role of someone very prominent, and who knew the work inside out. And for me, as a manager, I thought that that's how I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be good at this.
mm,
I'm supposed to be able to report this and that and that. And it killed me. It literally killed me. 1.5 years of trying to pretend to be who I'm not. And one of my senior
yeah,
managers pulled me in. Rizal, I can see you struggling. You're working so hard every day, and you're not delivering. Do you know why? Do you think, is there anything that is stopping you? And I told the person, her name is Miss Omori. I will always remember that, Omori Kacho. And she said that there's this thing called wabi-sabi in Japan. It's about the appreciation of imperfection and seeing imperfection um, as something beautiful. So it doesn't really relate to what I'm going through, but what she was trying to tell me that is that you don't have to be that person. You have your own strengths and you have your own flaws. Now, sometimes people always say that you have flaws, you work on it. there are things that you can work on. No matter what you do, you can probably learn bits and pieces about it, but you will never be good at it. But then
Mm.
there you have your strengths. So your strengths is the one that you can amplify and use it to your advantage. So at that time, I didn't really understood, what I need to do to be able to understand my own strengths and weaknesses, and what I can hone my skills on. Then I started studying and I learned about myself a bit more. Then I realized that, whoa, um, I found that my passion is actually engaging with people on a particular area, and it was actually HR, uh, funnily enough. And I was always very accounts centric, right? So it was, I was stuck, bottleneck there, and I don't
Mm.
know why I'm doing this, because I'm a qualified accountant, and I thought that was what I was meant to do, and I didn't want to do that. After that, and it was stopping me from being me. Then I just handed that job over to someone else, and I focused on doing HR. And because I was a general manager, I also had a knack of speaking to people, and
Yep.
they also got me to lead the business development and marketing side. And within the space of 3 months, I matched my targets immediately, and it was uncanny because I didn't know that it's something that I'm able to do. I woke up earlier, I walked faster, I spoke with confidence, and I started, appreciating what I do. And that's through understanding my own imperfections and knowing where I can really focus on. So once I had that fixed up, then I know where I am as a person
Mm.
in that organization. The next thing, which is more important, another term, which is called kintsugi. So I don't know if you've seen this before. So in Japan, kintsugi is the art of patching things up that are broken. So you have that, pottery
Okay.
that's broken up, and they use, gold lining to patch things up, and it looks a bit, off place, and it's odd, the cracks being filled up. But after working on it, it becomes something very new. And again, my senior manager, Mr. Omori, spoke about it to me. So, kintsugi, it's this beautiful thing in Japan where they piece things together. So, Rizal, now that you found your sweet spot, let's build a team around you and then patch things up so you make a running and efficient team. So I started to then figure out, okay, so my weaknesses are this. These are the things that I can't do very well. I'm the type of guy that cannot focus on one thing, hence the three companies. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to
Mm.
go and talk, meaning that don't give me transactional, operational stuff. So I can do it, but it will take time. So
Yeah.
I had to go. I started looking for people with that sort of capabilities, and if they're better than me, better. I want them to be better than me so that it
Yeah.
helps make the whole thing work well together, because we need to push each other. So when I knew where I needed things to be patched up, I focused on that and make sure that I have the right people to support me. And because of that, even when I moved to Malaysia in 2013, and when I met my team, it was very quickly, guys, this is who I am, this is what I do. And we started to get to know each other, and I start to assess what their capabilities are. And then I know already that if when I'm working on something, this is how I'm going to present it to them, and this is where they come in and then they help me. And then there's always an open conversation to fix that, because I know that I am not going to be this person that you think I am. I'm not the perfect
Yeah.
leader. Just because I have the title, the senior title, doesn't mean I know everything. You guys should know better, and you come and fill me in. You become my kintsugi, basically. So everywhere that I go from then on, I was always very conscious about myself, what role I play, and where my strengths are. And then I have my team member who will complement my strength and also my weaknesses. So then when you come into a team and you work together, it just flows so much better. No one's
Yeah.
stepping on anyone's shoes. Everyone's, having one set goal, and everybody helps each other from an add value perspective, rather than just, because you're my boss and then you're my team member and this is your specialty, you do that. But there's that other element where this is where I'm weak at, you come and help me on this, and then this is where you're not good at, I can come and chip in as well. So there's always that, trade-off between the two, and it helps build relationships so much stronger. So that's when people chase for perfection, I always say that you can always chase for perfection. You may not get it. Don't be disappointed, but you just have to continue to strive to improve, but know where you need to improve and then know where your imperfections are. And that's an ongoing journey that you will have to discover
Yeah.
in your life. Because, you the older you get, different things come to you, right? I mean, you said it just now as well. As we grow old, we have different stages in our life, promotions, different team members, new companies, family members, loss of life, changes,
Mm.
pandemic, all that. So there's so many things moving around. But if
Yeah.
someone really appreciates what Bisabi, all these changes that is happening around you, you just are able to have a look at it from a different perspective. That's things do happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it destroys an opportunity. It destroys what's happening around you. You just have to know how to learn and understand how it does help you. There's something that happens that always have an impact to you, be it good or bad. If you're able to see it very clearly, you know what next steps you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I think you touched on it earlier as well about the value of self-analysis and understanding your own imperfections, and therefore being able to leverage them. But whilst you're talking, it kind of made me think of the trying to be a perfect employee versus trying to be a value-adding employee. Because I mean,
Mm.
I was never successful as a recruiter until I started doing things my own way. As in I joined a recruitment company, a head company, and you get trained how to do it, and you have to follow certain processes and do it this way. And I would try to do it the way that I was told, and I just didn't get good results. I was this very distinctly average, and it wasn't until I left that environment and I was given a new environment where I could do it exactly how I wanted and just think about the result and then think about how I am going to get the result rather than thinking about this is somebody else's process. And that, it wasn't until then that I started to be successful. And I think a lot of people get stuck in this idea of this is my education, this is the role that I've been given, this is what I have to do. I just have to follow this and this and this and be a perfect employee. But actually,
Mm.
they don't get any satisfaction and they don't really get anywhere. It's not until you realize it's just about the result, and my value as an employee is about getting that result, not following the processes. I mean,
Mm.
is that kind of similar to your experience in the past of, especially from an accounting background, which is a lot about following processes, um, uh, versus that more entrepreneurial idea where it's just about a goal, it's just about a result.
Yeah. Wow. That's actually a interesting way that you put it. And we all would. I mean, as if I was in my old role in corporate, having a perfect employee is like, wow. I just don't have any issues to deal with, and I don't have to worry. We would love
Mm.
that as well. But maybe I'll go a bit off tangent of this, right? In
Yeah,
terms of being value adding or being a perfect employee, whenever there's an issue in a company or in an organization, whenever someone comes to me, I got this person who's not doing well. The first thing that I would raise to anyone that reaches out to me is that, okay, tell me what is the structure or what are the processes that are in place for the team member to deliver their work, because the success and failure for a staff really
mm,
highly depends on what the organization has prepared for them. Reason being, the firm is always bigger than the employee. That's my view. Because employees come and go, the firm will stay on as long as it remains in operation and it's making money. And it is under the responsibility of the employers or management or the firm owners to make sure that they themselves prepare the right platform, the right environment, the right structure,
mm,
the having a real focus on people development, making sure that people are not just stagnant in their role. Because if you don't have that, if you're relying on individuals to, you know, we want you to be more creative. We want you to be more innovative in your ideas. Go and think. You know, we've done that to our staff before, and no surprise, nothing. You might get one or two ideas, but it's really nothing that they have thought about. It's like really basic. It's like okay, hoo-ha. It's not nothing special. But if you create the environment, if you raise awareness and there's thought leadership going in, there is conversations, and your evaluation or your feedback isn't done just once a year, you have that conducive environment where people start to develop. So one of the things that I instigated when I was in corporate was that, you know, we have to plan engagement, uh, and I always tell my guys, you know, you have 12 months a year, that's 4 quarters a year. Now, if you
Mm.
have 4 quarters a year, you have 3 months in a quarter to be able to achieve something. So, if you want to have a very conducive working space, what can you do to make sure that your team members remain engaged, they develop as an individual, and then later on and think how they can become add value team members. So that means social engagements, that means discussions and meetings, and that means personal development, i.e., training. So if you don't have that in place on a quarterly basis, how can you expect someone to be able to, you know, start thinking like a manager, even though they're not one, or someone who's vested into the business? So
Yeah.
in that context, yeah, it's a bit a different take to it. So when somebody comes to me with that, you know, my staff is not he or she is not doing so well. Just do the same thing and with nothing new ideas. Yeah, have you given that platform? Was there a discussion with that? Was there, you know, opportunities with the trainings and samples being given? Have you empowered them to do things? So yeah, that's my take on it.
That's interesting. And I think so. I think we've got time for one more quick kind of theme to the conversation
Yep.
before we have to wrap up. And again, it
Mm.
was interesting. It came to me whilst you were talking. Uh, so many people, especially in HR, uh, HR is going through an amazing transformation right now and becoming a real strategic part of many businesses. I mean, it's been happening slowly for 20 odd years, but now it really seems to be ramping up. But there's still a huge base of HR people who uh, are stuck in operations and stuck in the importance of processes and procedures. Um, how do you break people away from that within your team? As in, stop them thinking we're doing it this way because this is the way that we've always done it, or blaming their failures on things which are out of their control, like processes and procedures. It's one of the most frustrating things to me as a recruiter when the team says we can't hire this one because it's our policy not to hire at this level or this level, and they're making these very important strategic decisions based on uh, uh, these policies, almost arbitrary policies. How do you how in the past how do you move past that and got people to understand that policies are put in place for a certain time and a certain period, and as soon as they are not working anymore, you have to get rid of them and build new policies. I think that's where a lot of companies I've worked with have been stuck for, is the idea that policies they think policies are there forever, whereas I think policies are there to help you, and as soon as but they come outdated very quickly, and they have to be constantly reviewed. Is that your experience too? And have you had trouble with employees who are too bogged down in policies?
Yes. Wow. That's you reminded me of some of the experiences that I went through, and so the first thing first is that because I was lucky. When I was in Japan, those guys stuck to policies like ironclad. You know, it's very difficult. Everything in Japan, everything has to be approved by a seal. You know, the stamp,
Mm,
right? So you got your name stamp.
yeah,
And in the past, it was done physically. So a letter has to be sent. Somebody stamp it. And then when I was there, it was through an online system. So there's a soft copy stamp. So once approved. And the amount of detail that you have to put in for any kind of changes, it's almost like you should give up applying
Yep.
change.
Yep.
Um, when I went to Baker's, then it opened up my eyes to the fact that it's a global firm, so there's always talk about improvements, keeping in time, and then because the HQ is in the US, so we do get really updated information and then new best practices that can be applied into the different offices. So
Mm.
that's great. But in relation to your question, if I were to be approaching it uh, from a new angle, because I'm a coach, uh, it everything starts off with a conversation. And one thing for a lot of these people, there's limiting beliefs that this is why I have to do something because that's what the policy says. And I always take some time just to sit down with my managers and find out really understand why procedure or policy is in place and what's the purpose, and then try and pick their brains and find out that is there any way that you can we can improve this policy because things are different now, just to have a sense. And if there's some buy in there, that's great. But if there's none, then usually I would have pointed them to different directions, which is to go and look up subscriptions and information available online. So what I got my team members before in the past to do was, especially on the HR side, when I came in, the first thing I asked was, have you ever subscribed to any leading HR websites, right? So there's HR Asia, there's a few big ones in the UK, in the US, and the ones that are free as well as available. And I asked them, the reason why I asked them is because I wanted them to start thinking like business owners, and not just as a person who just takes, request and then you just process it like a robot. We want them to be able to think and start getting, new ideas and try and implement and propose. Because you always want to try and improve our services. So as business owners, you always want to up your game. If you're doing the same thing, you're on, where's the challenge? Where do you grow? So once you start subscribing to that and then getting on LinkedIn, so I was very happy because I was on LinkedIn from way back and I started to see the value from connecting to different people, and they start having speaking sessions and speaking engagements. Some are paid, some are free. So I made sure that my team members are allocated enough budget to be able to sign into a program where they get to speak with other leading experts within the same industry. And that's where when I mentioned about investment of time and money, I think that's critical. If you don't do that, then don't expect change, because these people they're not going out of their shell and then just doing what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. That makes them happy because it's a comfort zone. I'm doing my work. That's all I care about. But if you want to, be able to improve yourself in your particular role and potentially go and find a better role in the future, you can't stop yourself from developing, and you need to reach out. So one is having the conversations and finding out their own appetite, and then second one is going and subscribing and attending sessions. The third one that I always instigate for my teams to do in the past 8 years when I was in my previous firms is this thing called satisfaction survey, service satisfaction survey. Um, it's not necessary, but I like to put my team on check, and I want them to be on their toes. Um, because if you're thinking of yourself as a business, if you're a department or function, you're just a function. But if you're a business, uh, perception and service quality matters. So on a yearly basis, these guys will prepare a survey asking different levels within the organization. It could be the end users, it could be management, and then requesting feedback. And of course, I will go through and make sure that the structure is such where I am able to understand what the sentiment is, and secondly, what are the things that they want us to do or improve on. So from there, I get to know one, their own areas that they want to work on through the conversation, ideas from the market through the trainings that they attend, and then the needs of the organization. And then and there, I have my, you know, following financial year strategy.
Yeah.
3 points you wish to achieve, and then go back to my quarterly breakdown, and these are the things that you need to achieve, and this is what are your quarterly plans to be able to match that. And that keeps them engaged, that keeps them attuned to the business needs, and at the same time builds the relationship with me as a general manager or a senior manager in the team, who is focused in trying to bring improvement, and also believing that you should evolve in your own role. One thing I mentioned to my team members before, I know that we're just a bit over time. Um, in law firms, most of the time, functional roles like HR, finance, IT, and so on, it stays stagnant, right? Stagnant because your function is that. But I feel that everybody should grow in their role. So when you are writing your CV, if you work in a company for 6 years and you're in the same role, or maybe you get promoted once, your job scope doesn't really change. So I wanted them to be able to say that, okay, this year I've achieved my, implementing this particular, initiative. And the second year, I attended a speaking engagement. So these are all achievements within the same role that you can put on a year-on-year basis. So I think for their career in the future, be in the same company or outside, they have very significant milestones that they can achieve, something that they're proud of. Even as simple as doing Microsoft Office training, which has a Microsoft Office certificate. I
Yeah.
instigated that, and I wanted them to learn, and they put it in their resume. So everybody now has a nice, beefy little resumes of really good achievements, instead of just 6 years HR assistant or exec, which
Yeah.
says nothing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry, a bit long, but I really,
Yeah.
really want people to be empowered to make decisions and think of themselves as a business within a business, and tie in their personal needs, department needs, and the organizational needs, and you have a very full structure of your
Yeah.
role, not only just what you do for the whole year in personal development.
I think that word empowerment is is the key one, right? Giving people the not just the ability but also the assurance that they can make changes and they can do things. But yeah,
Exactly.
we are past the hour mark. So Rizal, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think for myself, I can talk about this kind of thing all day, and I enjoy talking about it all day. But the podcast has a time limit, unfortunately. So again, thank you so much for spending this time with me. To everyone watching, thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a wonderful evening, and hopefully you'll join us for the next session. Thanks again, Rizal. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Awesome. So I'll keep on recording this, and I'll cut that off later. But yeah, thank you so much, mate. How did it
No.
feel for you?
I don't know the editing part. I'm very sorry. You might have to do some editing, but yeah, I loved it, man. I loved it. I loved actually talking with you. I think you've got tons of things to speak about, and clearly you know your stuff very well, man, because you've been doing this for many, many years. So I have to match that. So I'm kind of pressured as well.
No,
So, but yeah, I love it.
I thought it was a really
Yeah.
good session. But it's always the case when as I said, I've done 4 or 5 of these now over the last week and a half, and I write down all my conversation prompts, but it kind of goes out the window a little bit, and you just end up having a conversation, and it goes on way longer than
Yeah.
uh, intended. So when Ben, my CEO, asked me to start doing these, I thought they would all be around 15 minutes long, and I
Mm.
planned them to be 15 minutes long. And so far, the shortest one is 45 minutes. And on this one, I think is joint first. Joint first place has the longest, about 1 hour. So yeah, the plans
Okay.
always go out the window. But yeah, so thank you so much for doing this. I will start to
No worries, man.
prepare everything, and like I said, I want to release them every 2 weeks, and I've got about 4 or 5. So it might be a month or a month and a half before we actually launch or release this one. But hopefully, before then, I'll get like a bio from you and a profile pic that we can use when we launch it.
Sure.
and then we'll go from there.
Fancy one. I use a fancy one. I'll make one up. Yeah, I got tons
Oh,
that are.
fantastic!
I love superimposing myself on things. So
Yeah, I'm a late comer to Photoshop and things like this, but now that I've learned how to use them, I just go crazy and start imposing myself on all different things. It's quite childish, but quite fun
no,
as well.
it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, man.
But yeah,
If
we
you
have to
ever,
once everything. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, we should go out for a drink to the pub and then catch up.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
definitely.
It's been a while.
Once things loosen down, I still haven't been to the office in 18 months. Um,
God.
I'm a bit of a hermit. But yeah, as soon as everything loosens down, definitely we should have a meetup, and then yeah,
Yeah,
go from there. Awesome. So
good stuff.
thank you very much, mate. And I'll be in touch as soon as I've got the next things going, and we go from there. Have a great weekend.
You too, mate. Cheers, cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.